Alright, it's all done, man. It's been way too long. I got so many of the components here and figured out for this thing, but until I had these things back, we couldn't get going, and they're back now. Basically, the shop that was doing all this stuff, the big hang up they had is they were waiting for the parts from Race Tech. They had to order custom springs. Apparently they lowered it 1.5 inches. I guess that's the cool thing to do to Supermotos. The bike's already pretty tall, so that's gonna be fun. SMS Racing is the one who worked on it. They've actually moved over to out of a Venture Moto now, so if you need suspension stuff done, go check them out in McKinney. You can send your stuff into them as well. They did a bunch of trick stuff to this thing. I wanted to film more of it, but a lot of the stuff they did, they don't really want to show on camera. Like, it's more than just valing it and changing the spring rate. They ask you, obviously what the bike is, how you're gonna ride it, how old you are, what do you weigh, do you have any like previous injuries. I like the age things. It's like, yeah, I'm real fast, I need that bad suspension. How old are you, sir? Well, I'm 42 years old. They're like, okay. I've never had custom tuned suspension, so this should be really cool. Also, I had it up there, I had them use their presses and machines to go and throw new bearings in here. A lot of stuff you can do if you have a press. And there's other ways to get these in there. There's always like a caveman way of doing it. I had him take the bearing off the bottom here and put a new one on, which is really cool. And he went ahead and greased it up for me because it'd be a pain to do once it was on there. Went ahead and had him put the new bearing races in here. A lot of these things, there's special tools you need, and unless you're doing the jobs all the time, it's just not worth your time and money to buy half of these tools. Sometimes it's just worth, you know, getting them to do that. Clean this thing up real good before I took it into him. I may have gotten a little carried away at one point with it, but you know, I think right now we're gonna get the bike back up in the air and we'll start assembling the rear end first. It's not perfect, but that's a lot better than it was. Probably go ahead and replace this roller since it's easier to do now than when all the stuff is in there. Pro technique there, beat your arm until it goes down. A little wore out there. So many crevices. This is gonna make me mental. I'm gonna have to just stop. The bearings in these things don't spin like amazingly well anyway. Like, you kind of hold it just by the inner races here and spin it. It's not like it. But I didn't like when I was tightening the bolt up, it felt like it wasn't trying to move at all, like it was being very jammed up. I've gotten a slightly longer bolt, and I put in a little washer here. They're just smaller than the outer diameter of this bearing race, so that means all the weight will be on the inner race. So even if I push on these really hard, it's still, I mean, it won't, because it never did that anyway, but you can feel it's actually now spinning correctly. Oh, it's the parts for the bike. I shouldn't have to think about it, right? But you know, you should. That's why you should stop and think about it sometimes. Nice. The old chain gang was all beat up, so we got a new one, and by no means you have to install it with the swing arm on or off, but if you have the swing arm off, you might as well real quick throw it on there. Only the OEM one has this on the side here, and this is what you would call like a chain block, and actually to most Supermoto bikes you want this because your chain is now so much closer to the tire, wider tire in the back. You're going from like a 120, in this case we're going to be going to a 150 in the back. So having one of these in there, the little chain block, is really great to keep the chain from tapping the tire. Oddly enough, the OEM one had it, none of the other ones did. I even had to get the new washers and screws here. The old ones were so rusted out. Yeah, I'm missing that little bolt that goes right here, and I forgot. I bought one of these right at the beginning of the project. Son of a monkey. They totally have these little washer things. I just bought those. Oh, there's all kinds of good stuff in here. You buy a crap box bike that's missing 150 parts, you probably should get one of those. Makes me feel good seeing like parts go back together. It's been so long. New bearings in there that we bought, as well as all the new bearings in here, which I said I had the suspension shop go and throw those in for me. I always find these things are a little bit stiff to get in there. Sometimes you have to lightly persuade it. You're having to massively persuade it, maybe stop and check, see if everything seems right. There we go. Anything that sits on a bolt that's gonna be something that pivots like this, I always like to put a little bit of grease on it, just like you would your axle. That's not to make it like pivot on the bolt or anything. There's bearings in here. It's gonna help make a little bit of a seal in here. This is steel, so you don't want water getting up in there. So if water does get in there, it's less likely to corrode or do any damage. Especially things like this, they're gonna be serviced from time to time. I mean, even if it's many years in between. You don't need a lot, just a little bit of grease. I like to put on all things like this. Hate using a 12 point on here, but there's no way to get a tool in there. About that tight should be good. These only go one way, so if you ever get real confused looking at these, the shock can only go on that one, certainly can't go on that one. So this bottom one will go to the linkage, this one will go to the shock, and this one will go to the swing arm. It sounds kind of dumb, but you gotta check. Oh, look at that. Look at them new bearings. confirmed everything's lined up correctly. When you're real close, you can kind of take another tool and you can slightly manipulate it and use a rubber mallet. You don't want to be banging on it doing that. Nice. I don't know what the torque spec is for all these little ones. I did look it up for the big guy, but personally I just feel fine. I'm comfortable with knowing about how much torque to put on things like this. Do what you're comfortable doing. Maybe I'm an idiot. Yeah, feels about right. Before I throw this shock in though, I do got to give a real quick shout to Parker on Instagram. I threw a photo up with the shock sitting in the frame kind of like this. And he said, you know that's backwards, by the way. Thank you, Parker. You guys got a really cool XR he's building himself, so you should go check that out. That'd probably be when I was putting the carburetor on or something. I would have been like, oh, whoops. And that would have been a pain in the butt. Also, do follow me on Instagram if you want to see sooner updates. Follow me on Patreon if you want to see these videos an entire day early with more content and swear words. It's crazy. Be safe. Total fail on my part. I have to undo this bolt to get this thing to drop out of the way first. It's been so long. He looks like a motorcycle again. I'm so happy. Right, so I go ahead and start working on the upper steering triples and whatnot. What I still have to do is I have to grease this bearing here. Your palms here, and you actually want to take this grease here. This is some Pivot Work grease that came with it. But if you notice, one side of the bearing is the opened end is a little bit bigger opening versus the other end there's almost a very small opening. So we want to take that bigger end, and what you want to do is you want to kind of get your palm here. You want to actually like press it into it. You want to go until you actually see it coming out the top here. You just want to keep pushing it. Just start to see it's just starting to come out the top there. We want to do that all the way around. Grease forced up into the whole bearing everywhere. Got it all beat up into the little bearing holes. Now while your hands are like this, it's going to be hard. I'm going to have to like, alright, here's what I'm going to do. We're going to kind of move the camera and just kind of fart it in there. It is nice to just put some grease around the top of this. Assuming these seals are good and you take care of all this, it shouldn't be a problem, but definitely won't hurt to just put some grease on this whole thing. Anyway, it is steel. Water gets in there, like I said with everything else, if you don't want it to make problems. Your other seal goes on top up here. And I'm going to take a little bit of grease, a little bit into the crevasse. A good bit of this will probably just end up squishing back out, but that's alright. Alright, just kind of cap that on there. When we go to put the stem in, I have to kind of hold this down because it'll want to push this out. This looks so hectic. Alrighty then. Slip that up through here. I have like better tools for doing this. I don't know where mine went, but you just want to get it where it's like just as it starts to get about stiff. See right there, actually I might go hair off of that. If this ends up in a case where you got the whole front end on and you feel it's got that slight little click, you can still tighten this with the whole bikes together. Like even on kickstand, you don't even have to do anything special. You can just get in there and you can give that a little snug up. 30mm is the size of this fat guy on the top. So we can start putting our forks on now, but before we do, we need to put some kind of protector over this. Like you really got to put something over these things. They're just a cap for crap to fall into them. You look at this, it's like a valley in here. Before it came with those big accordion looking things. I know some people, like my buddy Ray, likes those giant accordion things. I hate them. So what I've done, it's like one of those cooking shows. Like, oh, here's one that's already done. This is going to protect the fork from any dirt and crap trying to get down in there. I had a small set of these on my DRZ. They actually last a pretty darn long time. This will flake off in like less than a year, the little painted on part here, but these actually hold up really well. Protect these seals and make them last for a real long time. Here's where it gets a little bit difficult, so I gotta bunch it up a little bit. Kind of like putting on some socks. Alright, here we go. I go a little bit lower than I need to go because it's easy to scoot it back up. They give you one of these old hoorah, it's like a double zip tie. So you take them and you kind of roll it a little bit. Got to be a real tough zip tie to take that though, because you can break them doing that. Gonna want to cut the little tail off here, and I like to cut them really down low on here, so in case your hand ever were to hit this, as hard as I push in there, I can't catch an edge. You know me, I'm gonna throw a little WD-40 on there. You might be thinking, but Jake, won't that degrade the clamp's ability to clamp? No, it's not gonna make that big a difference, and besides, this stuff's gonna dry a few days anyway. When you go to put it in here, this lower one's usually the one that's going to give you a problem. If one gives you a problem, you can carefully wedge it open. I mean, you got to be real careful. Don't try to mar it. I'm kind of pushing. I got my foot under it now, and I'm just sort of wiggling it as I twist this slightly. Hey. It'll get tight again as you get towards the top. Oh, there it goes. What you have to consider where your little adjusting knobs are. I've put the other one like that, so I need to make this one match. I find it best if you dry this off, it'll get some gloves that are kind of grippy. There it goes, it's starting to move. Now there's a little ring going around there, and I'm using that kind of as my marker for height. Tap it kind of on the sides, don't tap it in the middle because there's a little adjuster in there. All right, those look good. I want to go back and forth on these bolts a couple times. I don't know the exact torque for these things, but I know that I like to hold the wrench about here when I do them. Steel bolts going into aluminum. Keep that in mind. Ah, shoot, would you look at that? The forks, we didn't make sure they were even at the bottom. What are we gonna do? That's right, they just moved. It's not a big deal. I think next thing to do is put the wheels on it so I can make it rolling again. But to do that, I've got everything here. I've got the tires. I'm waiting on one small part because we're gonna go tubeless with the wheels here, but we're gonna do it on our own terms. We're not buying the high-dollar kit. If I'm successful, this will work, and we're not going to just glue the spokes because that's stupid. You don't do that. Before I do that, though, I'm going to try to clean this garage up. I know I've moved everything out. A lot of it's just junk, so I'm going to try to straighten this area up so my wife can walk through here without being mad at me. It's not broken. It's just putting it together. You think it's broken like that? Yeah? Well, it's getting unbroken slowly. I'm gonna call it quits for this video because it's got an individual subject, which is one, revealing the rims. Hi. There's one, revealing the rims, showing the crazy colors I got. Patreons, they've seen them a couple times now. And then on top of that, we're gonna try to make them tubeless, like in a DIY thing. So I want that to just be its own video because that's gonna be interesting. And of course we'll pop them on at the end, assuming everything works. I know it's been slow going for a long time. We've now got some of the main missing components we didn't have. And most everything else I need is either on the way, it's been figured out, something I need immediate too, so I can get some pretty good progress. I mean, I'm super pumped. It's looking way better than it did. Be sure to pick up some Big Red Pig merch if you haven't, because we kind of have blown through the budget a little bit now. Otherwise, that's the end of the video. Stop having dreams about this thing and actually ride it.